So what we were looking at yesterday was the Pischei Tshuva on the laws of brokerage and shidduchim. So I'm going to just bring that up again. Okay, so where we were is we were talking about the opener and the closer. So the way that we were explaining it, sorry, good morning. Okay, now the kasavot sham bedavar shadchan shedacha habal davar oto v'lakach shadchan acher ligmor hashiduch. The note of Yehuda also talks about a case where a family sort of dismissed their first shadchan and then took another shadchan. Hadavar yadua shehefresh gadol yesh bein shiduch lemekach. We saw this yesterday. Everyone knows that there's a huge difference. Maybe I'll make the font a little bit bigger so it's easier for everyone to see. Hold on. Uh, let's see. V'lokach shadchan acher ligmor hashiduch. So he dismissed the first shadchan, took a second shadchan to be the closer. Hadavar yadua shehefresh gadol yesh ben shiduch lemekach. Everyone knows that there's a huge difference between making a shidduch and making a sale. Ki be'esek hamekach ein sham dvarim emtsaim v'hamekach talui rak bedamim. He says, we all know that when it comes to a sale, the bottom line is just getting the price right. So there's very little else that needs to be manipulated or negotiated. So therefore, it's quite clear that if the first agent brings about an agreement, a meeting of the minds as far as price, so then all you have left is just to finalize the deal and sign the paper. He says, and therefore, in a case of a brokerage deal, when you're selling a property, if the seller or the buyer say, I'm not going to use the first realtor, who already has created an agreement in price, and I'm going to use a second realtor, but then he says, that's why I have a doubt whether there's a legitimate claim that the first broker has. Does that kind of deceit require the seller to pay the first agent his commission? Aval, however, when it comes to shiduchim, yesh harbe pratim levad sachan adan. He says, but when it comes to shidduchim, there are many details, far more than just the financial arrangements of how much the girl's father is going to provide as a dowry. There's a lot that has to go into the negotiation process. There's food, there's domicile, there's clothing, there's gifts. And quite often, it could be for some minor issue that the whole shidduch will fall apart. Because remember, it's not only is it about the details of the deal, but it's also about seeing how people negotiate during a shidduch. Like, do people lose their temper? Are people overly miserly in what they're willing to provide? How do they express themselves? All of these go into the decision of the family whether they want to go ahead with the shidduch.
these are the people you're going to be stuck with.
Because with a buyer and a seller, the buyer never sees the seller ever again, right? And therefore, in that case, where let's say there's a first shadchan and a second shadchan, the first shadchan can't have the same kind of taina. He says, because as long as he hasn't worked out all of these details, these very intricate details, to the point where there's no large or small detail that needs to be addressed, really the shadchan has not closed the deal. And therefore, if one of the sides would say, I'd like my friend or my relative to be the closer, even if the first shadchan had the ability to finalize the deal, ein kan ramos klal. There's no deceit here at all, because it could be that one of the sides sees that the shadchan has certain limited skills in certain areas of being able to bring both sides to the table. And this happens all the time. And therefore, the first shadchan, he may feel unhappy, he may feel that he has a grievance, but he has no legal claim. Lo shum din u'mishpat klal, but he has no legal claim whatsoever. And the Pischei Tshuva writes in the parentheses, Nirali kavanaso she'eno yachol litvoa klal chelak hagomer, that this means, and this is something that is the crux of the issue, it means that the first shadchan cannot claim that he's entitled to his full commission as the sole shadchan. Avol vaday shetzorach l'shalim lo chelak hamagia lematchil kefi takanat hamedina sham. But you certainly, even the Noda Yehuda would agree that you have to pay a portion to the first shadchan according to whatever the minhag of the place is. Meaning that in a brokerage deal, if there's more than one broker, you have an opener and a closer. So the opener gets a certain amount, and the closer gets a certain amount. Ad kan devarav ayin shamod. And we refer you to the Noda Yehuda. Now he says, Va'ayin bateres tzvi sifkatan yud zayin shekasav. Matzasi kasuv bepinkas aratzot. He says, he writes, and I don't remember when the Ateret Tzvi lives. Let me just do a Google and see when does the Ateret Tzvi. What is Ateret Tzvi? Who is the Ateret Tzvi? Let's see. Well, this is a different Ateret Tzvi. This is a Hasidish, this is Eichenstein. This is the Zidichover. Okay, but there's a different Ateret Tzvi.
Wikipedia.
Hold on. Halberstam, Tzvi Hirsch ben Naftali Hertz. It's from Vilna. So he's got to be either 18th or 19th century, okay? So what is, again, so let's go back. So what does he say? He says, Matzasi katuv bipinkas aratzot. I have found it written in some kind of manual of the land in which we live. The hamatchil v'hagomer yachloku b'neihem b'shaveh. That the opener and the closer split the brokerage fee 50-50. V'hamaschil onikra elamisha amar kama atanosein perishi yadaber odos sinus ve'emtsoi lo yikach klom. He says the opener is the one who negotiates the price. The middle broker gets nothing, and the closer gets the other half.
It's a middle broker in this case.
No, we don't know. There may not be. In other words, he's just saying any kind of there's an opener and a closer, and there could be any number of people in the middle. And he's basically, his opinion is that he's basically seen written in some legal manual that the opener gets 50%, the closer gets 50%, and none of the guys in the middle get any commission at all. Okay? Now, Aval Ra'isi Noagim, but what I have noticed is a different minhag, he writes. Shemechalkim legimel chalakim, that they split the commission into three parts. Shlish lamatchil, ushlish laemtzai, ushlish lahagomer. A third goes to the opener, a third goes to the middleman, and a third goes to the closer. V'haba'alim yanichu hashadchanus beveisdin, v'achar kach ne'emanim lomar mi hamaschil umi ha'emtzai umi hagomer, v'yagidu b'cherem. So what he advocates is that let's say the two families who have to pay for the shadchanas, they should take the amount, take a check, place it in the possession of Beis Din. And then the Beis Din will, then the brokers will come to Beis Din and they'll basically say, I'm the opener, I'm the middleman, I'm the closer. And they have to say that they accept upon themselves some kind of ban if they're lying. Vim echad mehem karov apasul yagid sad hasheni. Vim sheni at shnei atzadim heim psulim ein emanim ela bishvua. And of course, if there's anyone who's related to the families, that has to be mitigated as well to make sure they're believed. So they'd have to take an oath. The imam matchilim heim rechokim ubishas hagamar lakhu habal davar krovim shalem ligmor shiduch ein la krovim klum b'shadchanus. He says, and if the opener, the shadchanim, are not relatives, and they choose a relative to be the closer, the relative does not get any shadchanus money. Implying that the opener gets the commission of the closer, since the closer is a family member. Vim echad me'atzadim machnes is krova ligmor, ein lahashadchan harishon shum dinu mishpat klal, hainu mitzad hadin, v'chan mitzad hatakana. And of course, this disagrees with what the Noda B'Yehuda had written, because the Noda B'Yehuda had said that you are allowed to bring in a family member to be the closer, and he would get the exclusive rights of the shadchanas. And he goes on a little bit further. Okay, ayin shamod. Now, so that's the opinion of the Ateres Tzvi, that you divide, whoever's involved in the shidduch gets a portion, an equal portion. The opener gets an equal portion, the closer gets an equal portion, and if there's a guy in the middle, he gets an equal portion as well. Then he writes, V'ayim b'tshuvas Shev Yaakov, Choshen Mishpat Siman Yud Gimel, B'nidom dinu dvarim shahaya be'esek shadchanus ben hamaschil v'gomrin. He says that there was a dispute between the opener and the other shadchanim who were the closers. V'heishiv dover zetalia b'minhag hamadinos. And he said it really all depends on what the minhag of the place is. V'ani kasher ra'isi haminhag be'ir moladati kila kodesh Prague, litein lahamaschil chelik shlish. He says, I noticed that in Prague, the custom was they would give the opener a third. Keina hagti po b'medina zu. And that's what I do here. V'mhaya maschil rak eitzel tzad echad, yesh lo hachetzia hainu chelik shishit. And let's say there was an opener, but he was only working for one side. So when the shadchanis is going to be paid, he should get half of his third, which would be a sixth. Va'af demashma mitshuvas harash shehevi abes Yosef simin kuf pehei, that besirsur, the dafka behaya ramos, avol be'ein ramos bedavar mashalo nigmar l'idei hamaschil v'nigmar l'idei acher, ein lahamaschil klum. He says, even though it seems from the Chuvas Harash that as long as there was no deceit, right, the first broker gets nothing and the brokerage fee goes exclusively to the closer. Nearly lechalek be'inyan hamaschil kasher kvar pasakti kama ba'amin. He says, it seems to me that it would depend on what kind of opener we're dealing with. He says, the im hamaschil afshelo haya yochol ligmor mikol makom hu haya hamamsi l'shira chalaz. He says, because let's say the opener was the person who came up with the idea for the shidduch in the first place. Maybe he's not capable for whatever reason of being the closer, but it was his idea. He's the mastermind. who came up with this idea to bring these two people together. Sha'al yado niskala hadavar uvo shadchanim acherim. And then once he put forward the idea and suggested it, a whole bunch of other shadchanim came out of the woodwork and started working on it. Oto tzad shahaya merutze lahashiduch mamid acherim asher divreim nishmam yosel etzad hasheni. Or let's say the person that he presented the shidduch to says, listen, I think it's a great idea, but I don't think you're going to be able to influence the other side. Let me get people who will be able to be more influential to the other side. Hein al yadei al yado, hein al yadei shum grama, whether it's through them directly or through them indirectly. Bevadai diyesh lo din maschil. And therefore, that person definitely has the din of an opener, and he's entitled to some compensation. וזה הכלל באופן שאפשר לומר, אילולי שהיה זה המשכיל אשר התעורר לזה, לא היה עולה על דעת אחרים לדבר שידוך, לדבר שידוך על זה. That the definition of an opener who's entitled to compensation is that he comes up with the idea. Had he not put forward the idea, it's unlikely that other people would have come up with it. In Cain, vaday mechuyev litein lahamaschil kefi haminig, and therefore you have to give the opener whatever they're entitled to. However, it will be different if, let's say, the closers also came up with the same idea for the shidduch, and they think that they're the openers. In other words, they didn't know that there was another person who came up with the same idea. Let's say they're living in two different cities, and the Beis Din is able to ascertain that just by coincidence, the two parties, the two shadchanim, came up with the same idea.
It was a Bashir shidduch.
It was Bashir. Therefore, he said, "Im Cain hamaschil lo asa shum pa'ula tova bazeh." So therefore, the opener has not added anything to the mix. Hoel shabal davar eno merutza al yado, because he's number one, he's not the only person who came up with the idea. And number two, he doesn't have the ability to influence the other family to enter into the shidduch. And if therefore, if it weren't for the closer who came along, that they would have gotten stuck. In other words, they would have gotten nowhere. He says, in a case where the second shadchanim know nothing about the first shadchan, there's no reason to give the first shadchan anything. So this adds a new thing. So basically, what he's arguing, this Sefer Shev Yaakov, I think, is that what it's called? What's the name of the Sefer? Shev Yaakov. Yeah, he basically is of the opinion that if there's more than one shadchan and they both come up with the same idea, and the first shadchan was not the mastermind of the idea, but he came up with the idea at this, pretty much at the same time that someone else came up with the idea. He has a great idea, but they also had the same idea, and they're the ones who can control the process. So in that case, that first shadchan is not entitled to any compensation. But if it was his idea, and he puts it forward, and he thinks that these two families would be fantastic, but they need someone else's assistance in order to get that other family to get involved and to feel that this is good for them. So then both shadchanim are entitled to compensation. And he said that he noted that the opener gets a third, and then all of the others get the other 2/3. And you can bring a proof from the Gemara in Sota. The Isa Hasam Ksiv Vayikach Moshe es Atzmos Yosef Imo. Because there, the Gemara quotes the pasuk that says that Moshe took with him the remains of Yosef out of Egypt. But it says in Sefer Yehoshua, the aftermath of once they came into Israel, what did they do with Yosef's remains? It says they took the remains of Yosef that Bnei Yisrael had taken out of Egypt, and they buried those remains in the city of Shechem. Amar Rabbi Chama b'Rebbi Chanina, kol ha'osa davar v'lo gamro u'bo ha'cher v'gamro, ma'ale alav ha'kasuv al shegamro ki'ilu aso. So the Gemara says over there The reason why it doesn't say in Sefer Yehoshua that Moshe had taken the remains out is because he was not the closer. He was just the opener. So we see from this that if a person starts to do a good deed and doesn't finish it, then we go according to the closer, we don't go according to the opener. The kasha al zemi midrash yalka tehilim, but that's contradicted by a midrash, which says Mizmor Shir Chanukas Abayis LeDavid. It says, this is a beautiful thought, by the way, because we're going to say this. We're going to say Mizmor Shir Chanukas Abayis LeDavid every day of Hanukkah at the end of davening. And so the Medrash says, why are you saying that the house was inaugurated? That it was, what's the word I'm looking for? When you inaugurate a new house, yeah, it's not the word inaugurate. Dedicate, maybe that's the word. When you dedicate a new house, like the temple, the Psalm says that it was David's house. So the Midrash asks, "V'chi David bina'o v'halo Shlomo bina'o." Why are you calling it David's house? It's Solomon's house. Okay. Ella Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hoel v'chashavta livnoto. He says, God says, David, it was your idea to build the house. You dug the foundations, etc., etc. So even though you died before you had a chance to finish it, you started it, so it's called your house. So that completely contradicts the previous Gemara, who says that Moshe is not credited with bringing Yosef's remains into Eretz Yisrael because he was only the opener and he didn't finish it. So, but using our distinction, where it depends, did the closer have the ability to be the opener or not, it works out very well. The Gabe Atzmos Yosef, below Hatchala de Moshe, Hayagam Kenit Kayem Bevade Oto Mitzvah Lidei Acher Mishum Hashvua. He says, if Moshe had not taken the remains of Yosef with him, for sure other Jews would have gotten together. Yosef's own descendants would have figured out where Yosef was, and they would have taken the remains with him in order to fulfill the oath that Yosef made to his family. Promise me that when you leave Egypt, you will take me with you, right? So we can rest assured that had Moshe not done it himself, somebody else would have done it. Rak da amru hanichu lo kvodo bigdoilim k'deisa asam. But they said, you know what? We should give the honor to Moshe because he's the leader, and if he wants to do this mitzvah, we should give him the opportunity. Lachei nikra al shem hagomer. And because of that, since other people could have done it, and it wasn't that Moshe was the only person who was capable of doing it, that's why we say that since he didn't finish it and other people could have started it, we don't give Moshe the credit in Sefer Yehoshua. Kaven di ilav shekodam hamaschil hayagomer nami maschil. In other words, if Moshe hadn't started it, the rest of Bnei Yisrael would have started it, and so we don't give Moshe the credit. Masha'en kein bevinyan Beit HaMikdash, the lo nikbaz man kavua lebinyan. But when it comes to the temple, there was no time frame which God had assigned to the construction of the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore, it was completely at David's discretion to either initiate the building of the temple or leave it for somebody else to do. The ilav dehit orer David, efshar lo haya mitarer melech acher, kamo shelo hit orer Shaul, lachach nikra al shemo chulei. And look, Saul, the first king of Israel, did not initiate the building of the temple. And David could have easily, similarly have said, I don't feel a need to build the temple. I'll leave it for somebody else to do. The fact that he initiated it of his own volition, where there was no specific obligation for him to do so, means that he was the opener who was vital to the process beginning. In other words, it's not something that could have been done by somebody else. And therefore, he gets the credit of building the Beis HaMikdash.
Naming rights.
He gets the naming rights, exactly. Umizer raya l'nidon didan bedin hamatchil b'shat chanos. And this is the proof, therefore, for our case. When a person is an opener for a shidduch, De'im hamatchil haya hamamtzi ladavar, that if the opener was the mastermind, and he's the one who came up with this great idea that nobody else had thought of, V'ilav hamtsa'ato efshar delo hayu gomrim maski adaitayu, and had he not put together the idea, it's possible that the closers would never have come up with it themselves. Vadai ro'ui lo schar hamatchil al kol panim ad kan dvarav ayin sham. Then he certainly deserves to be compensated as the opener, and that's the end of the idea. Va'ayin bepischei tshuva le'evin ha'ezer simin nun sifkatan tezayin kama prote dinim be'inyan shadchanas. And therefore, this is the pischei tshuva in Choshen Mishpat. He says, I continue this discussion as far as the rules of shadchanas in my commentary to Even HaEzer, which is all about the laws of marriage. So we can go further down the rabbit hole, but I think that for now, maybe we'll go back to Rav Shiraga.
But it sounds like it's not the amount of effort you put in necessarily in the opener, but just the conceptual idea.
Yeah.
You may not do very much about it except just raise the possibility and then
right, and that's what Rav Shiraga had said. It's got nothing to do with amount of time, amount of effort, the financial investment that you've made. That the minhag is to give a third to the opener and 2/3 to the closer. Although there he was talking about where there's a middleman, so you divide it into 3 parts. But it seems that that's the consensus. He says, "V'chein kasav b'shut maharshag." I don't know who the maharshag is. Let me just see if there's shut mahar. Let me just see if there is such a shut on my CD. It could be it's on my Otsar HaChachma.
So Robert, while you're looking that up, so what happens if someone introduced the idea a year before this happened, and the boy's father or mother said, no, I don't like it, and then a year later, somebody else introduced the idea, and then they, for some reason, they go for it.
Yeah, right. A lot of things can change in a year, right?
So the first person that had.
I know of many situations where the parents of a girl or the parents of a boy think that their child is God's gift to earth, right? God's gift to the Jewish people. And so people start coming with shidduchim and they feel, I've got the corner on this market, so I can afford to be very selective. So no to this, no to that, no to the other guy. And then a year goes by and they realize, hey, they've stopped calling. The shadchanim have stopped calling. Something must be going on. And so they'll get a call from somebody else about the exact same boy that they rejected previously, and they may be more amenable to it.
What happens there then for the payment?
Well, let's analyze this. Remember what he had said was, if the second shadchan independently comes up with the idea, and it's not that it couldn't have happened without the recommendation of the first shadchan, then the first shadchan is not entitled to anything by just coming up with the idea. Yeah, he'll have resentment, but the truth is, if he comes to the parents and he says, I came to you with this guy a year ago, how come you weren't, and it was my idea. They said, yes, it was your idea, but it was someone else's idea as well. And when you came to us, it wasn't the right time. And this person came to us independently. It's not like you planted a seed in his head. If you were the one who told him that he should approach us, then you have a valid claim. So you're the opener. And maybe you should get a third of the shadchanas.
But similarly, if the parents of the girl then go to someone else and say, someone came up with this idea, we don't really like that guy, could you go forward with that? that would be problematic as well.
Mhm.
because-
Correct. If he's the one who came up with the idea and then they basically take his idea and ask someone else to run with it, so then he should be considered the opener and be entitled to a third.
Would the opener ever get more than the third because they do a lot more? They just don't close at the end? I mean, it's not just an idea then.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that, according to Rav Shraga, it makes no difference whether they do a little or a lot.
It's
So,
interesting because I mean, the first guy could do almost everything except for the last
right,
bit and only get 1/3.
yeah,
So it
correct.
Seems in it.
correct. Well, I mean, it evens out in the end. Yeah,
By secular law, the way the courts deal with these opener, closer, middle, whatever, they ask in the relationship, they say, who was an effective cause of the deal closing or the shidduch being made? And when that's the causation in fact test, which is they ask, but for the efforts of A, B, or C, would the deal have closed? And if the answer is that's the but for test, then they say if in fact they're the causa sine qua non, whatever it's called, to cause in fact or effective cause, then they would share. And essentially one could share more than the others if but for their efforts, it wouldn't have happened 2/3 or whatever it is.
in other words, the court will not use a table of 1/3 and 2/3. They will look at each
Specific
one as a
allocation.
case by case. Yeah,
Yeah, so if the closer, like after a hiatus of 5 months, or the trail went cold for the opener, and then someone stepped in or whatever, and someone closes it with 2/3 of but for their efforts, in 2/3 of their efforts.
right,
We're closed, they get that.
right. So it's very subjective. Each
Yeah.
case has to be weighed in the secular law.
In fact, I thought
Okay.
that's where we're going when we said the money goes to the basin and the basin decides. I thought.
Yeah. It could be that there will be cases where the basin will decide differently. Okay, we'll hold it here for today. Have a great day.